in action. Rules that keep things going smoothly and fairly. Rules that help us get where we're going. Help us work together, play together, and live together. Of course, in small groups, we sometimes get along without rules.
But there aren't any loud noises, just the sounds of working. We call these work sounds. Listen.
When many of us play together, rules make the game. Rules help us play fair with each other, so all can enjoy the game. Rules that apply equally to all. It's up to each one of us to know the rules and follow them.
Why do you suppose this room is so quiet? Perhaps we can learn from the teacher.
At New York's Madison Square Garden, a city college quintet faces five fast and fancy wet boots from the University of Oregon. It's the opening contest of an intersectional doubleheader, and New York draws 2 points worth of first blood.
And you know, we have found that knowing when to be quiet is a part of growing up.
16,000 fans watch the boys from the Pacific Coast as they try to stem the onslaught of City College fever. But it's all over when Silverstein shoots off the hardwood, decays the ball, and the ball game for CCNY 38-36.
Because a quiet room helps all of us learn.
How do you do it?
Well, each of us knows how to work quietly. That's very important.
But the evening sports sport is a long way from the locker room. In the second game, a team of Northwestern Wildcats is matched against St. John's University of Brooklyn. The lads from Illinois are off to a springboard start when Bob Coble eases the Allen into the basket to take the lead.
Do you think you could walk this quietly? Listen to this work sound.
But tribal warfare comes to the gymnasium as the St. John's Indians retaliate with 2 points. But now on, the game is touch and go, with 10 men helping to get it there. A beautiful display of teamwork, and Northwestern gets in the number column with sharp shooting Bob Coble doing the honors.
Hello everyone, welcome to Learn the Game, where you learn if you got an F for effort. Welcome Politicus Rex. We're going to be talking about Walt Bellamy, and if anyone cares about him. And if they don't, why don't they care about him? Walt Bellamy was somebody who played in the 60s and 70s, and a lot of people really don't know about him. So Rex, how are you today, sir?
All right.
Why do you think people don't care about Walt Bellamy?
Because he was just too far down. He was played in the Senders era. You know, he played against and with, Russell, Chamberlain, Kareem, Willis Reed. You know, he was in that era, that group. He did great things. But he was somewhat limited. He was one of those guys that was extremely dependable. Just rock solid, showed up every night, went to work. Almost in the Moses Malone type of player. In fact, to make people understand how Bellamy played, that's probably the best way that modern fans could relate to Bellamy, is say, well, he played like Moses.
Mm-hmm.
He was not a great athlete. He was not greatly skilled. He was textbook fundamental player that when he was on bad teams was the main guy and was just phenomenal. But as he got on better teams, he started taking, steps back. He preferred almost to be a role player over the lauded star. He was known as being a Southern gentleman. He was very kind man, very, very polite, very so didn't really have that killer instinct. I guess a lot of fans would say he wasn't. He didn't play dirty. He didn't get overly aggressive type of thing. But he came out of Newburgh, which is 45 minutes from where I am right now. He's from Eastern North Carolina. Went to Indiana. Is still Indiana's all-time leading rebounder. And that's 65 years later.
Yeah.
Then he was on the 1960 Olympic team with Jerry West, Oscar Robertson, Jerry Lucas, and Walt Bellamy. So that's the team, the amateur team that won the Olympics by an average of 42.5 points a game. And of course, half the guys on that team ended up being inducted into the Hall of Fame individually. And then that entire team is inducted into the Hall of Fame. So he's in the Hall of Fame twice. But he was just one of those guys that individually was very dominant when he was the focal point. But in his career, he ended up helping to build teams, but then was never kept on the team once it got to the top. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah, it was like he goes to the Knicks. The Knicks wanted to draft him. But the expansion team, Chicago Packers, got him in the I guess it would be 61 draft. And the Knicks always wanted him. They tried to work deals to get him from day one. They finally got him after the whole fiasco of the Chicago Packers, then changing their names the next year to the Chicago Zephyrs, to then relocating to Baltimore and becoming the Bullets. But he ended up going to the Knicks, and what people forget, and this is like we talked a while ago, it came up with the Showtime Lakers about how people today, fans today, forget that Magic wasn't even the starting point guard.
Yeah.
Their first two championships. It was Norm Nixon. And it's the same with Willis Reed. Willis Reed was the center for the Knicks when they won their two championships. But he was the power forward early in his career. Walt Bellamy was the center.
Yeah.
And then they traded Bellamy to Detroit for Dave DeBusschere, which ended up being the guy they needed to go over the top. And they moved Reed to center. And of course, that created the dynamic that just made them a dominant team. It was much the same as Adrian Dantley getting traded for Mark Aguirre. And that was what the bad boys needed to take the next step to win the championship. It was essentially the same thing. But Bellamy was one of those guys. Then with Detroit, he's in Detroit with Dave Bing, and they're making a great team. They're building. They're trying, they're moving up the ladder. And then they trade him, and they bring in, what's his name? Literally just jumped out of my head. I just read his name like 5 minutes ago. But the Hall of Fame center comes in. God, it drives me crazy. I got to look it up now. Out of Duquesne. You know who I'm talking about?
I heard it, when I was watching the documentary about him, I heard it, but I don't remember. Honestly, I was half asleep because I'm sick.
Yeah, it drives me crazy. But anyway, so then he goes to Atlanta, and then Atlanta, shortly after Bellamy leaves, gets Tree Rollins. So it's like he was always
Well, he
the
got
confident.
expansion.
Do
He
what?
got expansion drafted to Atlanta, right?
Do what?
He got drafted to Atlanta through the expansion.
Atlanta was an expansion team. They beat the Celtics in 1958.
What team did he get? What was the last team he was on?
I believe he finished with Utah briefly.
No, were New Orleans Jazz. Yeah, that's what it was. He got expand anyway. I didn't mean to
Okay,
interrupt. He
I see
got
what you're
expansion
saying. I thought you
drafted to
were
New
referring to the
Orleans.
beginning of his career when he was drafted
No,
by Chicago, but it wasn't the Bulls. He,
no, yeah, yeah. Anyway,
this drives me
didn't it?
crazy. I can't remember that guy's name. Ah, I've even seen him play.
Yeah,
Bob Lanier. Gosh, I could not think of the name Bob Lanier to save my life.
yeah.
But he was, they got Bob Lanier in Detroit. So he was always that guy that was like a half a step away from hitting the big limelight. And as far as I can tell, the two reasons for it are, number one, he didn't seek the limelight. That wasn't his personality. He was a quiet guy. Like I said, he was known for being very polite. His nickname was Southern Gentleman. But also his game was not, he rebounded and he scored on high percentage shots, and he didn't take shots that he couldn't make. He was the all-time leader in field goal percentage until Wilt changed his style of play. Went for 2 years in the mid-60s, Bellamy was the all-time leader in field goal percentage. Then when Wilt started passing and shooting very few shots, he overtook him by the end of his career. But Bellamy was just a guy when he came in, obviously with an expansion team, if you're able to get the best guy in the draft, especially a guy that's 6'11", 270, then you feed him the ball. But he also averaged 19 rebounds a game as a rookie, which that's just hustle. That's just work. The best way to explain why he is forgotten, look at the first time he matched up against Wilt. He was the rookie that was setting these, he was pushing Wilt's rookie scoring record. And this is right after Wilt. So people were like, "Oh, we got another guy that he's going to be like Wilt." So Wilt took it as a challenge, and the first time Wilt played against Bellamy went scoreless in the first half. Wilt blocked his shot 9 times.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's the difference. That's why we don't remember Bellamy. Now,
Well, I was going to say along those lines, Bill Russell was talking about getting into Walt Bellamy's head. That he used him specifically an example of how to get into people's heads. So if he used Bellamy, who he said was a lot stronger than him, with the size that you're talking about, I imagine that's true. What he would say, he would talk to him and he would just play him super aggressively on defense where they wouldn't want to pass him the ball because Russell would steal the ball or just put him in a bad position to make a bad play. And he would just say, well, why aren't they passing you the ball, Walt? Or,
Yeah.
however. and he would just get in his head about it. So it seems, especially with this Wilt example, that that may have been something, you talked about the killer instinct before, that maybe he just he was a step down with that kind of mental resolve within the basketball games.
Yeah, and that's just, but obviously from the numbers, like if you average 31.6 and 19 as a rookie playing against Wilt and Russell, and at that point, Pettit and those guys there, you're like, you have talent, right? There's no arguing the talent was there. It was just that mental, I'm going to do whatever to type of attitude he just didn't have. He was a gentleman. He was a nice guy. He didn't get violent.
Yeah. Aircraft carrier, welcome. What are your thoughts on Walt Bellamy? And do you have any questions about Walt Bellamy? But yeah, I find it interesting with him because he's a name that I hear thrown around a lot, but people don't ever really get into detail with. They're just like, yeah, he's an all-time great. He's a Hall of Famer. Looking at some of his, outside of his statistical outputs, I think he was an all-star 4 times, which really isn't that excessive. Never was on the All-NBA teams. And I think we definitely mentioned kind of the aspects of why he wasn't on the All-NBA teams. It's because he was playing with Wilt and Russell, who won all the All-NBA teams.
Well, this is something that people don't bring up when they start counting those things. When you talk about how many All-Stars, okay, well, back in his day, they selected the All-Star team by position. So for the years that Wilt was playing in the East, him and Russell were the All-Star centers. So it didn't matter who you were. If you were in the East, you were not making the All-Star team. You could be the 3rd best player in the league. You weren't making the All-Star team because they selected the All-Star team by position, and Wilt and Russell were both in the same division. So you're not making the All-Star team. So that's really not fair. Plus, they only had the All-Star teams, some of those years were only 10 players on each team. How many guys are on the All-Star team now? I don't know. I've suggested what they need to do with the All-Star team now is, since there's 30 teams, 500 NBA players, they need to have 4 All-Star teams. Each division have an All-Star team and play 3 games. And it will attract the league's attention a bit more than this ridiculous how they do the All-Star game now.
Yeah, it's weird. I think it's definitely evolved. I think that'd be an interesting way is to bring it back, because they did more games last year. I think they did four total games or something. I don't remember, but where they kind of split the teams up. But still, I like the idea of it, doing it by division. I do like the geographic way where you force people to play in whatever region. And I think it kind of gives some pride too for those natural rivalries, at least with the old rivalries like in the Atlantic Division, with the in the Northeast, where you got these old school rivalries, and you get to see them play with each other at the same time. So,
well, yeah, I mean, the whole Bird and Dr. J fight was the perfect example of that, when they in the preseason they get into the fight where Dr. J is punching him, Moses Malone is holding Bird's arms so he can't defend himself, and somehow it all got blamed on Charles Barkley. And then a couple months later, into the season, on the All-Star team, well, Bird and Dr. J were on the All-Star team, and they played the same position.
Yeah.
So their teammates on the All-Star team, they play the same position. Their lockers side by side in the locker room.
Yeah. But I think that's a way to have regional pride. I think a lot of people don't have that as much as, and I don't know, even now, granted, with my lifestyle, I move around a lot, so it might just be a personal perspective, but it seems like there's less pride of where you're from nowadays versus when I was younger, where it's like, oh, well, I'm from here, all these great things happen here.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
That's the CBA and the contracts and free agency. The whole loyalty to teams, loyalty to areas and all that, that's gone. If you actually built teams, if you had territorial drafts and still built teams the way they used to, it would be, KD is from Washington, so he'd be a wizard.
Yeah.
You'd have Steph and LeBron would both be playing for Cleveland. I mean, they were both born in the same hospital in Akron.
Yeah.
I mean, and obviously the international players would then be sprinkled around. But yeah, it's just
Toronto.
Yeah. Well, Canadian players.
Yeah.
So that would be what? Who's the Canadian? Wiggins? Is Wiggins still in the league? I haven't heard his name in like 8 years.
I think he is. I'm pretty sure he is. I'm 98% sure he is.
Yeah. Yeah, no, what aircraft carrier is talking about. Yeah, you see what happens when you have open free agency and yet you keep 100% guaranteed contracts. That kills. That kills any type of team loyalty and any type of team rivalry. I remember it was like front page news, and it was a huge deal when the Lakers cut Don Nelson and the Celtics picked him up. And the idea that the Celtics picked up a Laker, and then that Celtic ended up winning the championship winning shot, a couple years later. Or Rick Fox, when Rick Fox played for Boston and went to L.A., or when Bill Sharman, who was a Hall of Famer for Boston, then became the coach of the Lakers. That used to be rivalry stuff. It was like, how could you do that? How can you go coach? Even when Bird went, like, everyone knows why Bird joined the Pacers, because he's from Indiana. His number one loyalty is to the state of Indiana.
Yeah.
But in Boston, they were like, how can he go? He should be coaching us. He should be, he should have taken over the Celtics. But, all that stuff is gone. Once you take a teenager and you sign him to a multi-million-dollar guaranteed contract, then the loyalty to a team is gone, because no matter if he gets traded, if he gets cut, if he gets whatever, he's still getting that money.
To bring it back to Walt Bellamy, what's the most important thing to know about his historical relevance?
Uh, well, if you actually look at what he was able to achieve, the numbers, the not only seasonal numbers, but accumulative totals, and the everything from the gold medal in 60, to it's just going through to the Hall of Fame. When people say, oh, well, there was no competition back in those days. Okay, well, here's a guy that none of y'all even know anything about, who set all-time records, finished at the very top of individual statistical categories. And you don't know anything about him. He wasn't one of the top 3 or 4 at his position. Yet he put together that career. Yet you have casuals sitting there saying, well, nobody back then could play. Well, this is a guy that wasn't named Wilt, wasn't named Kareem, wasn't Bill Russell, didn't play on stacked teams with all kinds of Hall of Famers surrounding him. And yet he achieved these numbers and this recognition. What it does is it completely destroys the idea that, oh, well, they were all plumbers. It completely destroys that narrative. This is a guy that was like 5th on the depth chart of centers in his day. And he still, look at the numbers he put up. Look at the accolades. Look at the, it's like that tells you there was a lot of talent back then.
And we mentioned before, he arguably has the second greatest rookie season behind Wilt statistically, with his 31 points per game and 19 rebounds.
31.6.
Yeah.
That's almost 32.
So, but no one barely knows this guy.
Yeah.
And he had a fantastic run in the NBA. He played 14 years total, helped build a lot of teams to a lot of great places to do well. And
that's
then
probably the biggest thing. He helped build a lot of teams.
Yeah, and probably most importantly, the New York Knicks.
Yeah. Both his acquisition by the Knicks and his trade away from the Knicks made the Knicks championship caliber teams. Because when he came in, when he went to the Knicks, that you also had Walt Frazier coming in. At about the same time they traded him to Detroit to get Dave DeBusschere, they also got, a couple years later, they got Lucas from Cincinnati, and they got Monroe from the Bullets. And what made a lot of those moves possible was him coming to New York in the first place, up in his trade value, playing really well, being very solid, being the center on that team that was developing. But as centers in the mid-'60s started to get more, how do you want to say it? They dominate. They were strictly under the basket, right? Like you have the time, like the time that you like to point out, when you had Pettit and Shays and Neil Johnson, these guys that would play power forward and center, Macaulay, where these guys had jumpers.
Yeah.
So they had a different style than Mikan, and that's how they would draw out the bigger guys out, into the mid-range. But then you had guys like Wilt and Bellamy and Nate Thurman, and these guys come in that stayed under the basket you know. Well, once everyone is playing that same way, the only way you can change it is to get in to beat those teams is you have to change it to something that they have to adjust to. So what they did is they got DeBuscher, who's a jump shooting forward, and then they moved Willis Reed, who's a jump shooting power forward, to center. Then they get a second point guard in Earl Monroe to go with Frazier. And it was a setup that the rest of the NBA had a hard time dealing with.
Yeah.
And he just ended up being the odd man out. It was a style change, not a talent change. First time he lost his position because of a talent change was when Detroit was in a position that they were looking at getting a big center. And, at that point, Bellamy was getting older. So.
Yeah. I think he was in his 30 or around 30 at that point.
Yeah. And then obviously when he goes to the Jazz, they were getting the established veteran that you knew was going to not take bad shots, was going to grab rebounds, block shots, and he was going to lead a young team.
Yeah.
So, but but that's the thing. Whenever they want to sit here and say, oh, well, those guys were plumbers, Wilt was only playing 6'2" white guys and stupid stuff like that. All this is quotes that people have actually said to me.
Yeah.
Say, okay, well, what about Bellamy? Because Bellamy was like he couldn't even make the All-Star team, as you brought up. He was rarely able to even make the All-Star team. Yet the dude retired as the number 6 all-time leading scorer and number 3 all-time leading rebounder.
Yeah.
And he couldn't even get on the All-Star team because he was like the 4th or 5th best center in the league. Okay, so where are these plumbers at?
It must have been everyone else, Rex.
Yeah. Must have been everybody else.
Yeah, even though same story applies across it, but I mean, people are going to be dismissive just because they want to sell their narrative. Like I had a debate yesterday, and I lost because Kobe.
No. You were debating reality; they were debating image.
Yeah. So, but it is what it is. Is there somebody that reminds you of Walt Bellamy that plays today? That I know you talked about Moses Malone, but you talked about the work ethic, trying to get these rebounds, trying to make these really good, easy shots on less contested shots. But I mean, what else?
Well, I
what
think
other
for
kind
a while
of
there, like Serge Ibaka. Now, obviously, Serge was a better athlete, but he was a similar. He flourished as the 3rd or 4th guy, and he was just always consistent, always dependable. But your team did better when you had guys like Durant and Westbrook. But he was that he was going to block shots. He was going to grab rebounds. He was going to not take stupid offensive shots. He's not shooting unless he's sure he can make it. So you're not wasting possessions. I think as far as mentality, Serge Ibaka was really close to Bellamy, but Ibaka was a better athlete, but he played in a more athletic era too, when you were allowed to use your athletic ability to an advantage.
Yeah, yeah.
Thinking he's the only one that really jumps out at me. If you want to go back to the 90s, a guy like Mark West,
Okay.
um, who's went to the same high school as Moses Malone.
All right.
Yeah, trying to think of guys that actually play. Because here's the thing: it's not just being consistent, staying in your plan. I mean, Walt Bellamy was a. No, I'm not going to say that. Yeah, it's just really hard because, like I said, that type of player has been legislated out of the league by the rules in today's
Yeah.
game. So you don't really see a lot of guys like Bellamy. You could almost say Zach Eady, but it's a little bit early.
Yeah.
He's still a really young guy. But he does that. He's very high percentage shots, protects the rim, grabs rebounds, but he hasn't shown to be consistent. The thing about Bellamy is Bellamy was very consistent.
Yeah.
Now, casuals will say, oh, but he averaged, 31.6 as a rookie, and that was like basically his high through his whole career. He just kept going down but in relation to his role on the team, he was always very consistent. He did what he was asked to do. As he was surrounded by better players, he gave the ball up.
Yeah.
And shared the ball. One thing that struck me was that when I didn't know that the reason he went to Indiana was because Indiana, which is like, going up towards towards the Great Lakes, but Indiana was the most southern university that was integrated. And he didn't want to go to growing up in Eastern North Carolina, here where I am, in the 50s, he didn't want to go to a segregated university, like Sam Jones did and those guys. He wanted to go to an integrated university in the most southern, but he hated cold weather. So the most southern one was Indiana. That's why he went to Indiana, and he famously decreed that. Now later, you remember, after retiring, he was like really big with the NAACP and a whole bunch of charities, and ended up living out his days in Atlanta and helping the Black community. But he always made it a point that when he went to Indiana, he faced no racism on the campus of Indiana University, which I think for that time is a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so too. I'm not too familiar with the political situation of Indiana, other than the just general. It was the 50s, but even places where a lot of people would say that it was more progressive, like the Northeast or California or something, which I'm not saying it's not. I know in my experience, even in the Northeast, even today, there's still a lot of racism. But yeah, no, I
Rex
think
Chapman
that's
talked
impressive as
about
well.
it Rex Chapman talked about it in the mid '80s in Kentucky. He said it was actually reverse racism was actually one of the main reasons he went pro early.
You mean racism against white people?
Well, actually, he mentioned it was both sides, I guess, because at the time he dated black girls and everyone gave him a lot of grief about it. He said,
Yeah. Yeah.
Is Gobert considered to be an old school type? To tell you the truth, every time I watch Gobert, he's Sam Bowie. without the leg injuries.
Mm-hmm.
Gobert is what Sam Bowie could have been if he had been healthy. I mean, if you watch their running gait, how they move, their size, they're extremely similar. And playing style. Bowie was probably a better passer. But they're very, very similar players. He's a very similar player to Sam Bowie.
For some reason, I have it in my head that Bowie was a good scorer. Was that not true? He wasn't known as being a scorer.
Well, he was like Bellamy in that he didn't shoot bad shots.
Yeah.
But when you're 7'2", 7'3", with a huge wingspan and relatively mobile, you get a lot of rebounds. You get a lot of offensive rebounds.
Yeah.
Especially in the 80s when you could swing your elbows in there, you know, and you could really mix it up underneath. The bigger guy usually won.
Yeah.
Would get his fingers on the ball first. No, Sam Bowie was, people don't realize, he was coming out of high school and was invited to the Olympic trials for the 1980 team that didn't get to play. He was on that team. But when they had the trial, he was a freshman, which means that he was a high school senior. He had just graduated high school when the trials were going, you know, when the first selections take place. He was high school player of the year, Sam Bowie was. That's the thing when they sit here and when you hear people talk about the whole selecting Sam Bowie over Jordan, people don't remember who Sam Bowie was before the injuries. He was the number one player in the country. Him and Ralph Sampson were the two big stars. And when they played head-to-head, he outplayed Sampson.
Yeah.
And that did not go unnoticed. Then he made the Olympic team. Now, fans today don't know anything about that because we didn't play in that Olympics. Jimmy Carter refused to send us because the Olympics were in Moscow and they had just invaded Afghanistan. So all of our Olympians that had worked 4 years to get to that Olympics didn't get to go.
Yeah.
And that's when participation trophies started, because then the U.S. government just printed up freaking gold medals and gave to every Olympian that didn't get to go. True story. Look it up.
Yeah.
And, you know, Bowie was one of the best big men in the country before he broke his leg the first time at Kentucky. Then when he came back, they got to the Final Four and lost to Georgetown with Patrick Ewing. I mean, people forget what Sam Bowie was. He was the second coming of Bill Walton. And that's why Portland took him. And then when the next guy came along and they had a top draft pick with Greg Oden, who again was another big, strong center that was known for his passing more than his scoring, then they drafted him and he ended up having the same injuries as well.
Yeah.
And it's all the ghost of Bill Walton. They kept trying to recreate that dream team they had in 77. But when people say Portland was stupid for not taking Jordan, they already had Clyde Drexler, who ended up a Hall of Famer, and they had the NBA first team All-NBA shooting guard in Jim Paxson.
Yeah.
So if you want to ruin your team, take your best player, first team All-NBA, which means he's the best shooting guard in the NBA, is being recognized as that, and your number one draft pick from the year before, and then draft someone else that plays their position. That's how you destroy a team.
Yeah.
Right? And if you look at it, Portland got to the finals twice. Remember, they got to the Portland, Clyde Drexler got to the finals before Jordan did.
Yeah.
Okay? And they lost. But imagine if they had had a healthy Sam Bowie. What if Sam Bowie hadn't had the injuries? They may have beaten Detroit.
Yeah.
And then they went against Chicago. So a healthy Sam Bowie, it's possible Portland ends up with 2 championships. 3 if you count 77. That's
Yeah.
what they're looking at.
Yeah. Bill Walton. I was actually going to debate his playoff run, that it was greater than Kobe Bryant's. I didn't do the research enough because I thought Jokic was an easier one to do.
Well,
But I know that run was great
Jokic's run
too.
was better.
Yeah.
It was what he was able to do. Really, with Walton's play the following year was actually better than the year.
Yeah.
You know, his play in 78 was when he was the league MVP.
Yeah. I'd have to look at it again, but I just briefly looked at it and I was like, oh, well.
Well, see, here's the thing: it's so hard to argue for Walton. It's hard to argue for Wes Unseld, and then it's nearly impossible to argue for Bill Russell. They all played the same way, and you know, it's so hard to explain for a casual NBA fan, casual basketball fan to understand. You don't have to lead in all the statistical categories to lead a team.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
You know, it's you have guys that obviously lead from the front, you know, Michael Jordan, you know, going back, Moses Malone. You have, you know, those guys that lead from the front, where they're the main man on the team, and it's obvious everyone knows it. But when you get to a point where you have a team that has 4 or even 5 guys scoring in double figures, you know, it makes for a very dangerous team because you can't defensively prepare for that team. You can't say, okay, we're going against Jordan tonight. We're going to come up with the Jordan rules. Well, you can't come up with the Walton rules in Portland because he didn't lead the team in scoring. He wasn't even, I don't think he was second in the team in scoring. They very rarely ran plays for it. They did run plays for him, but they weren't plays for him to score. They ran plays that got the ball into his hands, and then he made the play. And it always cracks me up. You always hear LeBron say about himself, I always make the right play.
Yeah.
Which to me is always very condescending to his teammates because it implies that anytime there's a mistake, it's the other guy.
Yeah.
Because I always make the right play. Well, Bill Walton's teammates and coaches always said Bill Walton makes the right play.
Yeah.
And that's the difference is, you know, and that's kind of like the thing, I guess, really, if you want to say what one of Bellamy's weak points was he was not the passer. You know, he wasn't that guy. He was, you know, if he got in scoring position and he had the advantage, he was shooting. You know, if he didn't have it, it was basically the kick out and reset. He did not pass for many assists. So it was inside scoring and rebounding. That's what you're getting. You're getting it every game. You don't have to worry about it. It's going to be there. But that's not enough to win. And thus he was always the foundation to build a winning team. But it was always, by the time year 3, year 4 got around and the team was on the edge of being built, it was obvious that he was I don't want to say weak link, because the call of Hall of Famer weak link is just asinine. But he was the one that could get traded for the most worth with the less detriment to the team.
Yeah.
So he ended up being that guy. A lot like Adrian Dantley. Adrian Dantley was an all-time great. There was a 4-year stretch where he averaged over 30 points a game. Won multiple scoring championships. But he was very, you could even say, dominant individually. But the same type of play that made him dominant was the same type of play that once you're on the doorstep of winning a championship, when you're looking for a piece, not a star, you've already built a near championship team. You're just looking for the missing piece. You can look around all the teams that are losing teams and find that piece and trade them a guy like a future Hall of Famer, like a Dantley or a Bellamy, to get that missing piece that then makes you a championship team. But it gives him the bad image. But he didn't do anything wrong. So you see guys like that be dominant on losing teams. But as teams get right near the championship level and they're one step away, they always use that guy because he's the least versatile player. And they trade him to a losing team to get the guy that fits what they need. And it happens over and over again throughout NBA history. It's what winning teams do to get over the top.
Aircraft carrier. What's that?
No, I could say you could argue that's the only good reason for having 30 teams in the league is you get more of those. You get more of those types of trades.
Yeah. Aircraft carrier says, I love going behind enemy lines, behind the 8 ball, debating new generation guys in front of Gen Z audience. I think one of my favorite debates that I did against a group of people was Bob Cousy versus Steph Curry. I very much demolished the guy debated, and I won that debate from the judging. And then Dart, you can't debate a Gen Z guy, Tarzan Cooper versus SGA. You're not going to win. Maybe not with that one. I'd have to, well, I probably could technically win that depending on who I'm debating, but I don't know if I would get the win. But yeah, I do like debating old school guys against new school guys that they just say, oh, well,
yeah, but you see,
better.
It has to be a legitimate debate. You see, when you talk about Cousy, I mean, 8 times in a row, he led the league in assists. Well, for half of those seasons, he was also his team's leading scorer. And, oh, yeah, by the way, they were also winning the championship every year.
Yep, and that's let alone the All-Star MVPs, being All-NBA first team.
The
10 years.
The shortest NBA MVP in history up until Allen Iverson.
Yeah, all those things. And when you put it up against Curry,
where Cousy gets it is off the court, though. Because, I mean, it's a direct correlation. You can make the honest argument that the reason Steph Curry is making 40-something million a year is because of Bob Cousy. Because Bob Cousy started the Players Association. That makes
Yeah,
him
the Mets
almost
get
like the
you
George
too.
Washington of the NBA.
He can never tell a lie. No, that's probably my favorite Gen Z debate I had. Aircraft carrier says Cusie is criminally underrated by today's fans. He's not even just criminally underrated by fans. He's criminally underrated by NBA players. I mean, you've seen JJ Redick go in on him a few
Did you
years
hear him try
ago.
and backpedal on that?
Oh yeah, it was JJ Redick's an asshole though. Like it's I don't know. Obviously, I don't know him personally, but he is kind of a smug know-it-all. You know what I mean? So I think he was just, and he was on an entertainment platform, but he seems to be a guy that just is kind of a dick. But
Well, he went to Duke. That's right. I said it. I said it.
yeah,
Somebody had to take Christian Leitner's aura.
but what did I forget what he
Christian
said?
Leitner,
I
who
know
is
he
a
did.
very nice guy, by the way.
Yeah, and again, I don't know. JJ Redick might be a great guy. I don't know, but his public personality makes him seem that way. Um, but I forget how did he? I remember. I remember the whole thing against Bob Cousy. I forget how he tried to backtrack it though. What did he say again?
Well, first of all, he didn't say anything against Bob Cousy.
He said it against the players he was playing against.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He said Bob Cousy was playing against plumbers and all that. And then when Cousy basically, bitch slapped him, then he came back on his podcast and saying, well, what he was trying to say, he wasn't putting down those players. They were the greatest players of the time, but it's just a fact that they weren't as good because they couldn't practice as much because they all had to have jobs because professional sports didn't pay a lot back then. So their time had to be spent working other jobs to support their families and being fathers and husbands. And it wasn't a knock on them being trash. It was like they just didn't have the means at the time to be as good as modern players because real life interfered.
Yeah.
But what he's forgetting about is Darwin. Okay. If they made a rule and said no NBA player could, like, how long could guys practice back then?
What do you mean? How long could they practice? And
if you were NBA level, if you were one of the top 100, because there were only 100 players back then, if you were one of the 100 best players in the world, but the sport was not financially viable, so you had to have a job in the off season, which he's also wrong about that. Basketball players got paid very well. It's just if no one sits around for 5 months of the year. You get a job. Or you don't just practice basketball for 5 months.
Yeah.
They had summer leagues back then. Okay.
Yeah.
Wilt was playing in a summer league when he was 17, a pro summer league in the 50s when he was 17. Okay. They played year round. This whole, they had to have jobs. No, they didn't. George Mikan, for instance, made as much money as a heart surgeon. I looked it up.
Yeah.
George Mikan got paid the same amount as the top heart surgeon in the country. Okay, they got paid well. It's just with inflation, we sit there and they hear, this guy had a $12,000 contract. Well, yeah, there was no inflation back then. And a whole lot less taxes. So 12,000 back then was actually like, 75 to 100,000. And it's people don't understand. But even with, there's more to it than that. Like, yeah, a lot of NBA players would give their names to local companies,
Yeah.
you know. So you would see his name. He would be the figurehead. He'd do the radio commercial, and the work trucks had this player's name on the side of it. So they're like, oh, he was a plumber during the offseason. No, he wasn't. He owned the plumbing company.
Yeah.
He didn't go out fixing toilets. He owned the company.
Yeah.
That's different from working at a job. They owned it. That's what that generation did. Small business ran the country.
How about if you're a 7-footer that was really good for plumbing, especially for all the tight spots you got to get in?
Yeah, it's just stupid. I mean, it's just like, down here in North Carolina, Deacon Jones has for 40 years or longer, and like he's even dead now, I believe, and his auto dealership is still there with his name on it. It doesn't mean he became a used car salesman. He owned the car lot. Jeff Gordon Chevrolets are all over the freaking country. In 50 years, people would say, oh, well, Jeff Gordon was a great driver, but he wasn't as good as today. I mean, he had to sell cars during the off season. I mean, it's just stupid. I mean, if you want to talk like that, okay, well, Michael Jordan was a shoe salesman. He's worth $3.5 billion. His basketball contracts didn't give him $500 million. Didn't even give him didn't even give him $200 million. He's gotten almost all of his $3 billion off of selling shoes. But is anyone saying, well, Michael Jordan was a shoe salesman? I mean, anyone other than me, because I do it all the time.
Oh yeah, I say it jokingly, but
I believe Georgy Glukov was Latvian. I believe, or
I have no idea.
Lithuanian, or no? I think he was Latvian.
One of the Baltic states.
I'm like 50-50. I think I'm right, but I might be thinking of someone else. But in any case, guys practice as much as they needed to. And that's what fanboys that just like watch basketball and then like play down at the playground where they just pick up a team every 10 minutes, a different 5, and they think like that's how the NBA works.
Yeah.
It's like, no. If there's a 12-man roster, like back in the day, sometimes 11, and you're the 9th guy on the team, you're practicing in the off season, okay? Because if you don't, someone's coming in to take your job, because unlike today, the contracts were not guaranteed. Wally Pip. Google Wally Pip. Do you know who Wally Pip is?
No, I don't know.
Wally Pip was the center fielder for the New York Yankees and was a great center fielder. But he got hurt, decided to take a day off, and was replaced by Lou Gehrig, who then went on to play every game for the next 18 seasons.
Yeah.
So my entire childhood, anytime I would tell my dad, I don't feel like playing today, or, I hurt my ankle or whatever, my dad would always say, remember Wally Pip?
Yeah.
Because someone is getting out on the court today in a uniform. Somebody is going to play point guard for your team today. And you know what? When you show up for the next game, they may still start the guy that's playing today.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fantastic. In fact, it was Bulgarian. Okay, yeah, Bulgarian. I was close. But what's his name? The brothers, the two coaches, Van Gundy. When
Yeah.
he was coaching Houston, he said after seeing Yao Ming every day, like close up, said if Yao Ming could just stay healthy, that he was the greatest basketball player he ever saw. In practice, Yao Ming would play Stevie Francis one-on-one and beat him, not by just posting him up and dunking it, but by actually going like between his legs, behind his back, spin moves, fadeaways, threes. Yao Ming could actually do all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So what about the Eastern Europeans? We're kind of really segueing from the Walt Bellamy thing, but the
Well, Walt
Eastern
Bellamy was
Europe.
from New Bern, which was settled by the Germans. So there you go. There's your segue. Walt Bellamy to Nowitzki.
But I know we've talked about it before, but the Eastern European influx of this talent lately, let alone really for some time, but more prevalent now. Um, what do you think is the big deal with these Eastern European elite players that come over to the NBA? How do you think they get there? How do you think
Three
how do you
things.
think yeah.
Three things. Number one, basketball is the number one sport in their country. Number two, they now have a very stable government that is actively participating and growing a foundation of great players. And number three, after the fall of the Soviet Union and all of that, you have, and the stability of the region, which followed after some time, now there's an ability in these countries like Slovenia to now export their best. It's not just basketball. When you look at the best young talent in the NBA, Slovenia is like at the top, right? I mean, aren't Luka and Jokic both Slovenian?
No, I think they're from different countries,
Okay.
but I might be mistaken.
Because the guy that's also like being considered the greatest cyclist of all time, the guy that's winning the Tour de France and everything else every year right now, is also from Slovenia. And basically what I mean, not necessarily the country, but that area, Eastern Europe, is now that you've had an amount of stability in the region, these types of things like sports are able to grow, and they begin to export. Like, the Dominican Republic with baseball. Look at, it's insane how many major league players come from the small Dominican Republic.
Yeah.
And it's also just number one, you have to have the game has to be big in that country. And yeah, that's actually what I meant, Serbia. Sorry. But like the same region as like the guys back in the 90s, like Petrovic and all of them, they're all from like the same area.
Yeah, the Southeast Europe.
And Divac and all those guys. And they've been coming, but they had, the governments were not, able to fund sports greatly. Now they are. Now it's all big money anywhere you're at. So they're able to put money into it, so you're starting to see the rewards coming out of it.
What about the Philippines? Because that's one of their two tenets of culture is basketball and karaoke.
I am aware.
Do you blame the government for them not being as prevalent in the NBA?
Well, that and the fact that there's no one in the country over 6'2".
Yeah, that's fair. I haven't seen, not that I've been like, not that I know everything about the Philippines, but yeah, I never saw a Filipino that was taller than me when I was over there.
Now, the one thing that was funny about the pro leagues over there is so many of the guards, like practically all the guards, and all the perimeter players were all Filipino on all the teams. But then so many teams had either American or European centers because there were no Filipinos big enough. So if you wanted a 6'9", center, you had to get an American over there or a German or something like that.
Well, what I love about some of their entertainment value, or at least what I've seen, is I've seen a lot of kind of joke style games, even with when they have Americans in there. Like I saw something, well, in person, I feel like they get very animated typically with their commentary, which it's entertaining. It's, and a lot of times they'll be joking around with it. But even some of the stuff you see on YouTube, like I was saying, they had a guy dressed up as LeBron James and another guy dressed up as Steph Curry that weren't Filipino, and they were playing. I don't know, like I feel like they do really good, bottom line up front, in making basketball entertaining to watch.
Well, you got to remember that for a lot of these countries, people want to sit there and talk about, their introduction to basketball was watching the Dream Team and Michael Jordan, and that's bull. That's what elevated the participation of basketball. Basketball spread throughout the world, number one, when it became an Olympic sport in the 30s. Number two, with World War II, when American servicemen were sent all over the world. And then the biggest one, and it's the reason why the members of this team are in the Hall of Fame, is the Globetrotters.
Yeah.
So you have entire generations, like when you see those Filipino players in their leagues acting that way, playing that way, and having that jovial mentality when playing, it's because when they were taught by their parents, their grandparents, and great-grandparents especially, the only thing they knew about basketball was the Globetrotters. That was almost every foreign country's eye-to-eye first view of the sport of basketball was the Globetrotters.
Yeah.
And people forget about that. They've been forgotten about.
Yeah. On the sidebar, I love playing with the Filipinos because they love to run, and I don't. Yeah.
There's no. You slow it down and say, and I know this from experience. You start off, you get the outlet pass, and you start up court. And how we're taught, if you don't have the numerical advantage, you go ahead and you slow it down and set it up. Boy, in the Philippines, as soon as you slow it down, they're asking you, did you hurt your ankle? They immediately assume you're injured.
Yeah.
I thought that was hilarious.
Well, what I've seen is they like to play this. Yeah. They like to play zone to stop the inside shots too, but they're really good.
That has a lot to do with just so many of them are so comfortable with soccer that the thing I noticed over in Asia is so many of the defensive setups and offense, to be honest with you, basically just mirror soccer strategy.
Yeah, they do like to pass a lot, even in the paint. Like you'll do 2 or 3 passes within their zone, like right up on them.
Yeah, lateral passes. Yeah. Lateral passing is so huge in there. And see, that was something I was really good at. So I ended up, flourishing in that atmosphere. But yeah, the lateral passes, the triangle, not Tex Winter triangle, but the triangle that you're taught in soccer.
Yeah.
They use practically all the time over there. If you know soccer strategy, if you grow up as a soccer player in the United States, you can go to any country in the Pacific Rim, hop on a basketball court, and fit right in with guys you've never played with before.
Yeah. They called me Shamu when I was out there because I used to wear this black shorts and shirt, and I was large and white, so they called me Shamu.
No, they just called me crazy. I either had a flat top or a mohawk and had a goatee dyed bright red.
Oh wow, yeah.
So I was a rather intense guy in my younger days.
Yeah. No.
What is this guy asking?
Why were the night? Yeah.
First of all, you can't have cycling in your username and just begrudge the 60 Celtics on my show. Okay.
The 60 Celtics had a fantastic offense.
Yeah, they actually had the number one offense for part of that decade.
Yeah, so it I don't know. I never really got that. It's because somebody reads a number somewhere where it says it was the 6th ranked offense out of 9 teams. So that means that the offense was bad, as if all of this isn't separated by half a point per game or whatever.
Yeah, over half a century too.
Yeah.
No, it's for one thing, you have to understand, and we were just speaking about, if you were here cycling, number one, I'm a cyclist. Glad to have you here. I was actually in the 24-hour ultra cycling world championships last year. Got my butt handed to me, but I made the team. But you have to understand Russell and you have to understand Auerbach. Neither one went by statistics. Okay? People don't understand. When you understand that Red Auerbach knew Wilt Chamberlain when he was a boy. Okay, Wilt used to go to Red Auerbach's basketball camp every summer. Red Auerbach knew Wilt Chamberlain inside and out. And whenever Boston played Wilt, with the exception of, I think, 1 year, they always beat him. Then you fast forward to when Red Auerbach was the president of the Celtics, no longer coach. I don't think he was GM either in '86. But they employed the same defense against Michael Jordan. And modern fans don't understand it, don't get it. Those of us from the old era that saw how coaching used to work completely understood what happened. And the 60s Celtics, 50s and 60s Celtics, Russell Celtics, that was the beauty of Russell, was they could change the demeanor of the team with one substitution. And they, rather than trying to come up with a style and stick to that style, like let's just use as a comparison, Showtime Lakers. Showtime Lakers were going to be Showtime no matter what, right? That was what they were. That's how they played. They made you play their style. And
Yeah.
that's how they beat you. 60 Celtics did not do that. 60 Celtics went into a team, and it didn't matter who they were playing. They would then play the opposite style. So if you're playing a team that can only play fast-paced, and you have the capability to play fast or slow, do you play fast-paced with a fast-paced team and leave them in their comfort zone? Or do you change it up into something that you're still comfortable with, but they're not? And that's what the 60 Celtics did. That's why Havlicek came off the bench for so many. That's a good one. Oh, Brad Doherty or Walt Bellamy?
I think you got to say Walt Bellamy. I don't know.
Yeah, Brad Doherty, though, he had the back injury. Do you remember what Brad Doherty was for the back injury?
No, I know he's impressive. I'm not like trying to excuse how great he was, but it's
okay. I will put it this way: Walt Bellamy did more with his talent and his career, but Brad Doherty was a more talented player. I'll put it.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
But no, that's why the Celtics, they became a defensive team later in Russell's career because all the other teams in the NBA were becoming offensive teams. It's a copycat league. It always has been. When the Celtics were winning championships with Russell and Sharman in the backcourt, they were a run and gun team. When Russell joined them, they were the number one offensive team in the league. They were a run and gun team. He became famous for 23 rebounds a game and those outlet passes that created fast breaks. But once those guys retired, they were replaced with Sam Jones, who was a spot-up shooter, kind of like a Ray Allen. In fact, I would say probably Ray Allen is the closest to Sam Jones we've seen. They're very similar. And then Casey Jones was a defensive point guard. He was like a Gary Payton, except he literally was built like a running back. He had an NFL tryout as a running back. University of San Francisco's single-season rushing leader. So they became a defensive team because the other teams, you had guys coming in the league like Rick Barry, right? You had Oscar Robertson hitting his peak. You had out in L.A., you had Elgin Baylor and Jerry West just bringing it up 30 apiece. You had all of this offensive production in the era. So the Celtics would go into most games trying to take these offensive teams out of their comfort zone and play slow. Didn't mean they couldn't play fast. They could. I can prove it. They won the damn championship. That means they could play anyone's ball. But they played the opposite of however their opponent played, because Auerbach specifically drafted and traded for players who could do two things. And so he always had that variability. He could go early with an offensive juggernaut of a team, but then just put in Havlicek, who was quite possibly the best defensive non-center in the entire era. And now you've got, put him on Rick Barry, and all of a sudden, San Francisco isn't as dangerous.
I thought Rick Barry was a plumber.
Yeah. Well, I have a joke about that, but we'll keep this PG-13, so I won't say it. He did have 7 sons. Okay.
Yeah.
Or 6, something like that. But no,
Yeah,
Brad
more or less.
Doherty, I really thought Brad Doherty was going to be something. I got to see him play live in college, and I really think if Jordan hadn't have gone pro early, which of course everyone knows Jordan was going to go pro early. If Jordan had stayed for that final year, oh man, my team Georgetown. I mean, we ended up losing to Villanova, but if Jordan had stayed, that would have been something. Jordan, imagine. I really thought. In fact, I even bet someone money on the school bus. I was a senior that year, and I bet someone money. I don't remember how much. That by hook or by crook, the Bulls were going to end up with Brad Doherty,
Yeah.
and that the Bulls were going to win a championship before the decade was out. But he ended up
Yeah.
winning one.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
really
could you
happen.
maybe you could equate Brad Doherty's time with Cleveland? I think probably, again, this is just an immediate thought. It's probably the closest comparison to Bellamy on the Knicks. Would you say that's fair?
That's actually wow. Yeah, that's actually because here's the thing with Doherty. Doherty got too big too young, right? I mean,
Yeah.
when people don't know this about Brad Doherty probably, but he was a 16-year-old freshman. Okay, the guy was brilliant. All right, he graduated at 20. I think he still has the record as being the youngest player ever drafted that was a college graduate. That with his class.
Yeah.
But when he first signed to go to North Carolina, he was only 16.
Wow.
And I think and he kept growing. And I think that is what actually later, midway through his NBA career, started causing the back issues. Because to battle the other giants of the era, the guys from the 80s, you all know the names of the centers in the 80s. I'm not going to list them all. He gained weight. And that's when he started having back problems. I think his frame just couldn't carry that weight. He would have been better off just staying thin, But his talent level, to be honest with you, and I know the young guys here are not going to. I'm going to get so much hate for this. In fact, if you make a short of what I'm about to say, you'll probably get more views than anything. Brad Doherty was Tim Duncan before Tim Duncan. 100%. They were the same person. But one had a severe back injury. But Brad Doherty was Tim Duncan. Same shot selection, same body type, same size, same reach, same running gait, same skills, advantages, thought process, mentality, all the same. But one stayed healthy, one didn't.
Well, Tim Duncan
let the hate
didn't
come.
really.
Let the hate come. Let's hear it.
Tim Duncan got injured pretty early in his career. He just was able to keep playing at a very high level.
That's because it wasn't his back. As someone who has broken their back and practically everything else, it's a completely different thing.
I know the knee is because I'm not that I've broken my knee, but I have a lingering knee issue. I think he tore his ACL, right? Tim Duncan in 2003 or something, or 2004.
Did he
It
outright
was,
tear it? Or,
I don't know if it was a full tear. I know he tore his ACL, but I don't know the details of the injury. Um, but yeah, I know he had a knee injury fairly early on in his career. I'll go check it out.
yeah. But no, Brad Daugherty was amazing. I mean, he was the number one pick in the draft for a reason. You know? But no, Brad Daugherty was great.
It was he had his knee injury. Oh, he tore his lateral meniscus.
Oh, I don't even have my meniscus.
Yeah, he did that in 2000,
In either knee.
and it was I guess a partial lateral meniscectomy. So I guess it wasn't a full tear. Anyway.
Yeah, it's outpatient surgery.
Yeah.
But no, Brad Daugherty was absolutely phenomenal. If you ever watch him, he was the fundamental. Nothing,
Yeah.
Everything was textbook. I mean, his follow through. I used to show when I used to teach and coach. I used to show kids Brad Daugherty's free throw form. He had the most extreme follow through of any player I've ever seen in my life. It literally looked like he could almost scratch his own wrist.
Yeah.
When he dropped his fingers, I swear, it was like his wrist was like down here. It was so extreme.
Yeah.
But nah, I used to love Brad Daugherty, which is something because I hated North Carolina.
Yeah.
But no, that's a good one. Bringing up Brad Daugherty, you get an A for the day.
Not an F for effort.
Yeah.
A for effort.
No, that would be cycling, insinuating that the Celtics were below average on offense. Just because you don't score a lot doesn't mean you're below average.
Yeah.
It means you have a different playing style. They're still the best. They were still winning the championship every year. So there was nothing about the team that was below average.
Oh, well, this is what this, just to bring up my debate yesterday, that one of the points that the guy was going against when he said, he said that the defenses were better that Kobe Bryant played versus Jokic. And he listed off all the teams that Jokic went against. And I'm like, dude, you're talking about all this regular season stuff, and we're talking about an individual playoff run. I could have articulated this better. I did say this, so I just don't think I said it kind of haphazardly because I just thought it was ridiculous, and I typically am more convicted when I debate these things or make these points. But he's like, yeah, he played all these terrible defensive teams. And I responded, well, they were better or not. Well, they were better teams than the great defensive teams of that year because they were in the playoffs and they were playing against Jokic and everyone else. So how is that? You know what I mean? Like, just because
I know exactly what you mean. And it's the whole issue I have with casual fans. Everything is two-dimensional. It's a stat, or when you talk about the games, look, so many, and not to try and belittle you, but since you're the one that's up here talking and no one else is calling in or anything.
Mm-hmm.
How did you learn about basketball?
How did I learn playing it, or how did I hear about it?
How do you learn it?
Like, my mom taught me.
You're a Michael Jordan fan. You believe Michael Jordan is the greatest player ever. How did you come to that summation?
Oh, well, it started when I was a child, and then I've just reinforced. It's my claim for reasons, but if you disagree for different reasons because you think these reasons are more important, then that's fine. But yeah,
But how do you
initially
learn the
came to me
reasons?
when I was a child.
Like how did you learn what a pick and roll was? How did you learn about the triangle offense? How
No, yeah, well, my mom taught me the initial stuff of basketball.
yeah.
And then I don't want to pretend that I'm a basketball aficionado of how to play the game. I like to play a lot, but um, like I can't break down.
But the vast majority of fans, they learn by watching it on TV and listening
Oh,
to
that
a
too. Yeah,
former
sure.
coach and a former NBA player doing the commentary,
Yeah, yeah,
telling them this and that and the other. Because you can always tell because they all use the terms volume shooter, spacing, creating passing lanes or driving lanes. They all say the same cliches. That's how I know. All right. I didn't learn basketball that way. I played it. I played
yeah,
against players that are in the Hall of Fame now growing up. I played, at basketball camps for Hall of Fame coaches. I coached at basketball camps with other freaking great players. It's like I learned from being involved in it. I didn't have someone telling me while I'm looking at a screen, well, on a pick and roll, defending a pick and roll, you want to step over the top, to force the guy to take a wider, an extra dribble, essentially. That gives the guys behind you time to recover and shift and that type of stuff. I learned it from actually being on the court, trying to cover Muggsy Bogues and getting picked by Herman Hareed. Okay? I learned it by playing it.
yeah.
And so many casual fans learn it from YouTube now, this generation. But from watching,
They like to go off of video game stuff too now, like video game
stuff
terminology.
Like that. It's like no,
Yeah.
I didn't. So they don't have a direct correlation. Like there's so many times, even when I was young, casual fans who are friends of mine, I would sit there and they're like, oh, so-and-so missed a layup. I'm like, well, he was bumped 3 times shooting the layup. And they're like, no, he wasn't. So I'd have to rewind it and then show it, zoom in on it, and show it frame by frame where he got hit in his kneecap as he planted his foot, got nudged on the hip, and then got hit on the wrist as he was releasing.
Yeah.
I'm showing it, and you can see the ball go off on that angle, that the guy's arm swipe, and the ball goes at the same angle. And it's like he was hit 3 times. And I still have friends that would be like, well, it doesn't look like he was hit that hard to me. Well, that's because you haven't been hit like that. I have. I've gone in for a layup, and I'm going in, and the guy gets just enough of my hand to turn my wrist, and the ball does that thing where it hits the backboard, then the rim, then the backboard, and comes out. And everyone's looking at me going, how'd you miss that layup? You freaking hit my hand.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things. But that's the problem with so many casual fans is they talk about the numbers. And if someone is 6 out of 8 in points per game, well, they had a below average offense. No, they had a different game plan.
Yeah.
If they're winning most of their games and they ended up winning the last game of the season, which only one team does, their offense was pretty good.
Yeah.
But and people also don't understand, like I understand how the Mavericks won in 11. Okay. All I hear casual fans say is LeBron choked and they lost. But one player choking doesn't make you lose a series.
Yeah.
Okay. Magic played like crap a couple of finals. The Lakers still won.
Yeah.
When Jerry West finally broke through and won his title in 72 with the Laker team that won 33 straight, he actually had his worst playoff run of his career. But that was the only one he won. He was the MVP of the finals he lost.
Yeah.
The finals he won, he played like crap.
Yeah.
One player playing horribly, one star player playing horribly does not make you lose a series. They lost the series, Miami did, because a young Spoelstra was completely curb stomped by freaking, what's his name, for the Mavs, Carlisle.
Yeah.
He just coached circles around Spoelstra. But the big key was after they lost in 06, Dirk worked on a move in Germany every summer with no cameras. He never worked on it around the Mavericks. He never worked around it. He didn't ever use it anywhere. He worked on it in private with his private coach back in Germany every year. You can Google this. He talks about it. I learned it from interviews with him, the coach, and with Carlisle. And he learned this one move. Now, it was completely different from how he normally played. So when he went and he kept it, never used it for 5 years, but worked on it for 5 years, saying, if I ever get back to the finals, I'm not losing again. And by the time they get to the 11 finals, he's older, past his prime. He can't carry a team like in 06. He's getting, long in the tooth type of thing. This was his own words. And him and Carlisle had a discussion, and Carlisle told him, we have the players to keep the game close. What I need you to do is to outplay, to be the best player on the court, not for every game, not even for 4 games. If you can be the best player on the court for 4 quarters in this series, we will win. And if you go back and look, they would spread the ball around. Terry, usually it was Terry that took up the slack. But, Kidd and other, it was a whole team effort. And then 4 times he took over the fourth quarter. And when they got down to crunch situations, they had to have the points. He would run into the post, and he would do a little turnaround in the post for a layup that completely caught Bosch, or what's his name, the other one that was covering him, off guard.
Birdman.
Yeah, off guard, because they didn't know how to defend it, because they literally had never seen the man do that shot before. He had saved it for years just to use in that circumstance. The fact is, they were prepared for a 7-game series, a knockdown, drag-out series, with a specific plan of attack, and Miami was not. Miami tried to rely on raw talent and one player.
Yeah.
And it failed.
Yeah.
And Carlisle learned that in Boston. It's the old Celtics. But if you go back and look, 4 fourth quarters, Dirk took over. And those were the 4 wins. He did hardly anything through those games, the first 3. That was the plan. He couldn't carry a team through 16 quarters to win 4 games, but Carlisle understood the matchups and said, we can keep it close. If you can take over 4 fourth quarters out of 7, we will win. That's exactly what happened. Totally punked Spoelstra. Now, to Spoelstra's credit, he absolutely learned from it. And Spoelstra's now probably the best all-around coach in the league.
Yeah.
But at the time, he wasn't.
Hey Rex, my phone's about to die. But I thought we had a great show today. I think this has been one of the better ones for a long time. So uh, I enjoyed it. Thank you for sharing your wisdom across all of these basketball subjects. Um, and I hope to see a Filipino join the NBA one day.
I thought there was a Filipino at one point.
Who?
He was drafted a few years ago. Not full-blood
Really?
Filipino. I believe he's half. Could have swore
Okay.
there was a Filipino. Because I actually got excited when I saw it.
Yeah. No, I'm not tracking, but maybe might know that.
I
But
don't know. If I find it out here, I'm going to look it up. If I find it, I'll text it to you.
sweet.
Oh.
But thank you.
Okay,
What's
Jordan Clarkson, Jalen Green, Jared McClain, and Dylan Harper, all part Filipino.
All part Filipino.
Well, that's what I said.
No, I know. But I'm talking about a Filipino, like a real one.
Well, Jordan Clarkson actually plays for the Philippine national team.
Yeah. I'm talking about somebody who grew up in the Philippines. Like, you know what I mean? Like I could say, that half these white guys that came, they're French, but they grew up in Louisiana. You know what I mean? So like,
Who's the first French-born NBA All-Star?
I guess there's that Bob Cousy contention. But I remember you put the poll out.
Because I keep looking and looking and looking, and I can't find where I had read it back in the 70s. So I'm just giving up on that.
I know you put a post out on who it was, and I forget what the answer was.
Foreign-born. I'm
Okay.
saying who was the first NBA All-Star born in France?
First NBA All-Star born in France. Whew, I don't know. I mean, I can throw out guesses, but I'd be doing that for a while. I don't have a great idea. If it's
Dominique Wilkins.
Dominique Wilkins,
Born in
I would
Paris.
have. Okay. Yeah, I would have.
That's why
I would have
his name's
guessed some.
Dominique, guys.
Fair play. I would have guessed somebody that was joined the league in the mid '60s or '70s from a World War II baby or something. But
You also have Sleepy Floyd and James Worthy are from the same hometown, played at rival high schools, but never played against each other.
yeah,
And did not play each other until the 1982 national championship.
well, yeah,
Yep.
cool stuff.
Oh yeah, that's what I do, man. Is all these little, all these little things like everyone says Jordan is from Wilmington, North Carolina. Michael Jordan grew up in Wilmington, North Carolina. His family moved here when he was an infant, but he was born in Brooklyn. He grew up in Wilmington and is like Wilmington's most famous, person. But Wilmington, Meadowlark Lemon is from Wilmington.
Yeah,
Sam Jones was born in Wilmington. Althea Gibson, the first black woman to win Wimbledon. It wasn't a Williams sister. It was Althea Gibson in 1959. She's from Wilmington. Sonny Jurgensen, one of the greatest football players of all time, is from Wilmington.
I love how you mentioned Meadowlark Lemon first.
Well, because this is what fans don't understand. There was a time when the Globetrotters were a real basketball team.
Yeah,
It wasn't just show. It wasn't professional wrestling. It was actual basketball.
yeah,
And Meadowlark Lemon at one point was considered by a lot of people, to be the greatest player the world has ever seen who did not play in the NBA.
Yeah.
Now, this generation, now they start saying Oscar Schmidt was probably the greatest player that never played in the NBA. Before Oscar Schmidt, it was pretty much a given. Meadowlark Lemon was the greatest basketball player that never played in the NBA.
But I mean, is the Oscar Schmidt claim even really? Do you think it's that valid? I mean, he was a fantastic scorer. Um,
He
but
could
I mean,
rebound when he had to. He was 6'8", playing shooting guard.
yeah.
But it's mainly off his scoring. I mean, and really it comes from Bird.
Okay.
If you remember when Oscar Schmidt was inducted into the Hall of Fame, it was Bird that actually was you have to have a Hall of Famer
Induct you, yeah.
induct you in. Bird is the one that didn't, and Bird said that when he Bird had to play him in the dream team. And that was the one thing that all the players, they'd mentioned Petrovic, but Petrovic was still young and developing. But everyone on the dream team, Barkley had a comment about him too. Barkley's quote about Oscar Schmidt was that guy, and just shook his head. It's just like, my God, that guy can score. He can score as good as any guy in the NBA. But since he never played NBA talent consistently, we don't know what the rest of his game looked like.
Yeah.
We don't know. But as just a scorer, he could score on anybody.
Yeah.
Didn't matter who you put an NBA All-Star on him, or a guy from Germany or a guy from wherever. He could score. He could just score. He just had that kind of, ability. That's why I don't like saying Steph Curry is the greatest shooter ever. There's absolutely no proof that Steph Curry is the greatest shooter ever. Steph Curry is the greatest shooting NBA All-Star ever.
Yeah.
There's a difference. I've seen a lot of guys that could shoot just like Curry, but they were not good enough to play in the NBA.
Yeah.
I've seen guys that were 5'6" that could just sit there and hit. I saw a guy hit 13 in a row from the half court circle on a regulation size court, just jump shots. Guy never made the NBA. He played at Kentucky. He played at Iowa or Missouri, but back in the 90s, and he could shoot like nobody's business. I mean, my God, but he could not defend NBA caliber guards. He was too slow.
Yeah.
So he had no chance at playing in the league. But I guarantee if you drop money on it, him against Steph Curry at the same age. Obviously, Steph Curry has been able to do just practice shooting nonstop every day for the last 15 years because his way is being paid. But coming out of college, I've seen guys like Travis Ford, Brian Maggot, guys that could just hit every damn thing. But they had no chance of playing in the NBA because they just weren't NBA athletes. But Steph, of all the people who have made the NBA and, been given the green light, he is definitely the best shooter. But to just say he's outright the best shooter ever, there are 100 guys that never got to play above high school that can do one specific skill as well as guys that are the greatest ever. Like you can sit there and say, quick example before we leave, who's the greatest dunker ever?
And in the NBA or
Who's the greatest dunker ever?
Probably the I don't know how to say his last name, but Jordan Kilgannon.
Yeah. People can talk about Jordan. They can talk about Dr. J. They can talk about Connie Hawkins. the young group, Zach LaVine, all those guys. Yeah, okay, they're great, fantastic. He makes all of them look stupid.
Yeah, as
He
a
can do
dunker.
stuff they can't even do in their dreams. But is
Yeah.
he in the NBA? Absolutely not, because he can't play basketball. That's why I'm a firm believer. Dunking should be an Olympic sport. Just dunking by itself. It is the most athletic thing that the younger generation, the culture presents. It absolutely should be an Olympic sport.
Yeah.
In fact, I think every NBA team should have a dunk team. In every halftime at every NBA game, their dunk teams have a dunk off and keep track of the winners, and they have championships too. I think nothing else would bring more eyes to the NBA than that.
Yeah, I think it'd be helpful. I think it'd be interesting because it's one of the two big things that people are typically entertained by in the NBA. It's the dunking and the long shots. Um, I think the long shots get boring, but anyway.
Well, that's why I didn't say that.
Yeah,
I mean, the long shots are really cool in game situation, but I've
Yeah.
been in 3-point contests and I've been at 3-point contests watching, and by the time you get to like the semifinals, it's like, okay, can somebody step off the line one way or the other? Can we see some free throws or something? It's like,
yeah.
okay, I got it. It does get kind of boring. But with a dunk contest, if you open it up as its own individual sport, worldwide, as an Olympic event, you're going to get just the most amazing athletic specimens. You're going to get just, it would just be insane. And for one thing, we would probably not win the gold medal because I believe Jordan Kilgannon is Canadian.
Yeah.
But he also is getting older. He's not going to be around forever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's what the NBA should be doing. I think the NBA should have a playground spectacular every summer at Rucker Park. Put
Yeah, that'd be
cameras
cool.
on it.
Yeah.
Get NBA All-Stars out there on the playground at Rucker Park as an NBA endorsed event.
So, Rex, this is something that I thought of here because we had a lot more interaction than we've had lately. How about giving grades out to some of the guys that have been commenting? What do you give aircraft carriers today, A through F, for his participation in questions?
That's not even fair. Aircraft, he's the teacher's pet. He always gets an A. He's the one we can depend on. He's always an A. Everyone else is compared against him.
Yeah.
He's the nerdy little kid in class that you pick on now because in 15 years he's going to be a millionaire and I'm going to be flipping burgers.
Yeah.
He's that student.
How about AR7PR, the guy you asked about, Georgi Glukov from the Phoenix Suns?
That was really good. And I think the guy I was thinking about, I think he also played for Phoenix, but I think he played for Phoenix in the late 80s. And I cannot remember his name, but I think I confused two players. And I realized that when he gave the 70s and 80s time period that I had the wrong guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you give him for that question?
Oh, that's an A. Bringing up people that casual fans don't know is always an A because that's why we're here. That's why we're here. See, here's my problem. For anybody who's watching this for the first time, my problem with modern basketball fans. I have no problem with NBA players. They're the greatest players in the world. They play by the rules that are assigned. They don't make the rules. They play by them. When you say today's NBA players, they don't know how to play defense. Of course they know how to play defense. They're just as good at defense as anybody you know from the 70s, 80s, or 90s. But they're not allowed to play the same way because the rules changes. The best are the best, and they're always going to be the best. What I hate are the fans. The casual fans that have taken over social media and totally destroy the reality. When y'all sit here and spend 80% of all talk about basketball on the internet is about Jordan versus LeBron, shut up and start talking about the other great players in history. We're tired of listening about Jordan. We're tired of listening about LeBron. KD's better than Bird. All this stupid stuff. Okay. Yeah. What about the other 5,000 NBA players? Give them some time, some attention. What about the guys who are fantastic in college that didn't get the opportunity in the NBA or ABA? What about foreign players that could not play pro ball because of their governments? Guys like Sabonis that didn't get to the NBA until he was 30-something years old and broken down with massive injuries. That if he would have been able to go to the NBA, if the Soviet Union would have allowed him, Gorbachev, I think at the time, would have allowed him to go to the NBA, you would be talking about Sabonis the same way you talk about Shaq or Olajuwon.
Yeah.
You know, talk about those guys. You know, the give respect to coaches and to managers. Everyone slams Jerry Krause because of a make-believe documentary and totally disregard the fact that he built the Chicago Bulls. And they say he broke up the team because he was petty and he wanted attention. He broke up the team because the billionaire owner told him to. Because that's what every GM does in the history of every sport, is they do what the owner tells them to.
Yeah.
Learn the game. Learn the people.
All right, so going back to the grades, MGP Cycling for the 60 Celtics below average on offense. What do you give him? That's a grade.
I would give a D for the comment, but he has cycling in his username, so he gets a C.
What about Nazir Core for the Brad Doherty versus Walt
the Brad Doherty drop is an A.
Yeah.
That's an A. Yeah. Brad Doherty was my guy. Like I said, I hated North Carolina. I was a Lenny Bias guy. Maryland. I went to Maryland games growing up. My dad loved Maryland. We lived right off campus. And we'd go to College Park. In fact, my first ever basketball game, NBA game I ever got to go see, the Bullets and the Lakers, was actually considered a neutral game because it was being played at College Park, Maryland's campus.
Yeah.
But, Brad Doherty really should get more respect, as does Mark Price.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that. MGP Cycling gets extra credit for cycling in the name. Otherwise, I would say to that, what is that? Probably an A minus total with the extra credit?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, Rex, thanks. Thanks for joining. I thought this was a great show. I have 7% on my phone, or 6% on my phone battery, and this is when it starts crashing dramatically. But appreciate you. I'm free all week, so I don't know if you're available. Are you going to be available later this week?
We'll have to do day by day. I don't know what plans there are. Right now, Joey's sick, so we're not going anywhere. But I still have to run family members to work and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't have to voluntarily. just to give everyone a break since I'm not working until January. Oh,
Yeah.
one thing for anyone that goes in Wikipedia's Walt Bellamy's Wikipedia page, there's a comment at the end that says a street is named after him in New Bern. That is an absolute insult. The street that they named after him basically goes through the old tenements that have since been closed down.
Okay.
Right by the river, right by the park there. I was just there like 2 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago now. They did not do the man proper justice. He's the most famous guy from New Bern. He needs to have a main street named after him. Totally disrespectful.
Yeah. Well
Anyway,
said.
I'm done.
Yep. All right. Make sure to join us next time and learn the game.